And so this brings us to the point that is also mentioned in this latest invocation, that you can begin to question, what can I, as the conscious you, learn from my I am presence? And what can my I am presence learn from me, the conscious you? Because you have made these observations as the conscious you. And they are stored in your causal body. And in many cases, the I am presence will take the observations of the conscious you and learn from them. But not necessarily and not in all cases. So what you see on many people on earth is that there's a certain, what can we call it? Barrier, disconnect between the conscious you and the I am presence, where the conscious you has learned certain lessons, has made certain observations based on being inside the earth, being inside the energy system. But the I am presence may not have incorporated them fully into itself. And so, therefore, it is actually possible when you reach higher levels of awareness that you can start working with your I am presence and seeing if the presence really has integrated the lesson you have learned by being down here in embodiment. Has the I am presence really looked at life on earth through you, or has it only looked at it from the bird's eye view, so to speak? Because as we have said, your I am presence is always looking at life on earth, but it isn't necessarily looking at it from the inside. And you can have truly, I know this will be difficult to believe for some of you, but you can have situations where a person has gone through such a difficult trauma, for example, the birth trauma on earth, where the conscious you experienced great pain and suffering, created the subconscious self, the primal self. And the I am presence also experienced this as unpleasant, and therefore withdrew itself from it. And basically, you can have a situation where the I am presence has withdrawn itself from a conscious you, basically saying, oh, I'm not going to look through that conscious you until the conscious you has resolved some of these subconscious selves that causes it to experience constant suffering. And therefore, the I am presence is only looking at life on earth from a bird's eye view. It is learning certain lessons, but it isn't learning the same lessons as the conscious you, and it isn't integrating the lessons from the conscious you into itself. And this is the case for most of the people on earth who are not spiritually aware. There is that disconnect between the conscious you and the I am presence, where the conscious you is making certain observations based on life on earth. Now, for many people who are at lower levels of consciousness, especially those below the 48th level, where all of their subconscious, or most of their subconscious selves are based on duality, for such people, it's limited what the conscious you is learning, because it's always reacting through the subconscious selves. But still, they will be making certain observations that this isn't working, or I've had enough of this experience. And this is what basically we have talked about. You go below the 48th level, you can keep going down until you reach some kind of turning point where you don't want to do this anymore. And this is the conscious you. It's not a subconscious self that reaches this turning point. It's the conscious you that reaches the turning point and says, I've had enough of experimenting with selfishness, for example. It's not deciding this consciously, but it's just a recognition that the conscious you comes to. And so let's say a certain live stream has descended to the 18th level of consciousness. And it says, I've had enough. I don't want to go any lower. This is what I'm talking about. An observation, a conclusion, an epiphany, a resolution of the conscious you. This gets stored in that person's causal body. But if the I am present has withdrawn, the I am presence hasn't integrated that lesson. So now the conscious you starts going up from the 18th to the 19th, and it can continue to go up to the 48th level. And maybe at the 48th level, the I am presence is now willing to again look at the experiences of the conscious you, but it's still not willing to look at the most painful experiences. And so that's why I'm saying, when you get to these higher levels of the path, when you have worked through the other books we have given on healing the more severe traumas, such as the original birth trauma, you can start considering, what could I help my I am presence see that my I am presence hasn't yet seen? Up until a certain point on the path, you are feeling as if it's a one-way street. You are receiving light from your I am presence. Your I am presence is the more advanced part of your being. In previous Ascended Master dispensations, especially with the I am movement, it was seen that your I am presence was almost like a godlike figure. People from that dispensation would look at this teaching and say, this must be a false teaching. Because we are used to seeing the I am presence as some perfect being. But this was the teaching that could be given at the time. And so the reality here is that as you raise your awareness, you become aware that things are more complex. That's the whole idea of progressive revelation. If you think back in the 1930s, you log into this I am movement, Ascended Masters can give direct teachings, and you see that this is progressive revelation compared to the Bible, for example, which was written down so many hundreds of years ago. And so this is now a new higher teaching given directly from the ascended level. And you call it progressive revelation, you see it's important, but you somehow think that in the 1930s, the Ascended Masters could give you the highest, most advanced teaching that we have to give. This is simply unrealistic. What could be given in the 1930s was based on people's level of thinking at the time. And it was a simplified teaching. Nothing wrong with it, but it was a simplified teaching that made it seem simpler than it was, made it seem easier than it was to qualify for your ascension. And as we go towards higher levels of progressive revelation, naturally, what would make it progressive is that it reveals more and more teachings, and therefore it becomes less simple, less black and white, more nuanced, deeper layers of teaching. That is what progressive revelation really means. And so what I'm saying is that when you step up, and certainly when you go beyond the 96th level, you can begin to see that your relationship to your I am presence is more complicated. And you can begin to see that it is a two-sided process. Why did the I am presence send the conscious you into embodiment? In order to grow, of course. so your I Am Presence wants to grow. But as I said, the I Am Presence is looking at it from a bird's eye view, and it can withdraw so it doesn't experience what the conscious you is experiencing. And so therefore there can be this disconnect. And this means that there can come a point where you, as the conscious you, can begin to consider, what do I have to teach by I Am Presence? And in order to really integrate that, you have to let go of this belief that your I Am Presence is an almost godlike figure that is perfect. You have to realize that the I Am Presence sent you into embodiment because it wanted to grow. And it sent you into embodiment on an unnatural planet because it wanted to grow, because there were certain lessons that the I Am Presence hadn't learned on a natural planet. So naturally, you, as the conscious you, can have something to teach to your I Am Presence. And it is possible that you might have made observations down here that the I Am Presence has not yet integrated. And so, how does it relate to my topic here? What is it that is the highest gift you can give as part of your divine plan? Well, it is, at the immediate level, these observations and lessons and conclusions that you have come to as the conscious you, that are stored in your causal body, and that you can connect to and release. And many of you have already done this. Many of you can see that when you talk to other people, whether it's about spiritual topics or something else, you will see that you are sharing something. You are sharing something with other people. You are sharing from the heart, as you often say. Well, that is your observation of life. From your causal body, you are sharing. And there is probably nothing more valuable you can give to other people who are open to it. Now, as I said, some of your family members may not be open to it because they want you to continue to play that role they have defined for you. But then you can go and find other people and just be aware of how the dynamic is. There are some people where you can have these conversations, free-flowing, they don't feel threatened by you, you don't have to watch every word you're saying. You're just sharing of yourself. And that can change other people more than the actual contents of what you're saying. Because you are sharing yourself. It's not a matter of coming up with intellectual arguments. You're just sharing of yourself. And suddenly that person senses there's something genuine in you, and it can help that person connect to what they have learned in their causal bodies. But they need you to show them in many cases. And so this is, for many of you, a step you can at least begin to contemplate. And then you can, of course, see that beyond sharing what the conscious you has stored in the causal body, there's, of course, also the I Am Presence. Because we can look at it this way. You cannot be in a physical body, looking through that physical body, and at the same time having the bird's eye view looking down from above. And so your I Am Presence has also made observations of life on Earth from the bird's eye perspective. And you, of course, at the conscious you level, can tune into that. And so you can learn to tune in to both what you have stored in the causal body and what your I Am Present has stored in the causal body. And therefore you can have that bigger perspective. Many of you, again, have already done this as part of your spiritual path. I'm simply making you aware of it so that you can become more conscious and develop it more. You can see that many times when you look back at your life, you have had these visions, you might say, where you have stepped back from a situation, looked at it almost from the outside, or where you look at things happening in the world and you just have a different perspective, almost like you are seeing a bigger perspective that most people are seeing. Many of you will see how you are not as pulled into these strong political debates and opinions that you see. You're sort of standing back a little bit and realize that it's not for you to be pulled into this. And why are you on the spiritual path? Because you have integrated over many lifetimes that you are not primarily in embodiment to partake in physical pleasures or physical experiences or to store material goods. You are here for something broader, a wider perspective. You are here to learn, to grow. And as you become more aware of this, you can begin to integrate. You can begin to integrate more with your I Am presence. And this is a delicate topic, a delicate balance, because we have given teachings, and again, you can go back to the 1930s when we first started talking about an I Am presence. And you can even look at these charts of the presence from the I Am movement and the Summit Lighthouse, where there's the lower figure and high above it is the I Am presence. And it reinforces the sense of distance. So we have given teachings in this dispensation that you need to overcome that sense of distance. But you see, how do you overcome it? By integrating with your presence. And how do you integrate? Well, by beginning to think about this, contemplate. There are things that the conscious you has learned that the I Am presence has not yet fully integrated. Then there are things that the I Am presence has seen from above that you haven't fully integrated here below. And therefore, it can be this symbiotic process, the figure-8 flow. And you realize, of course, that when you are considering the process of the ascension, it is a two-way process, but it is the conscious you that comes up, that ascends to the level of the presence, because the presence is in the spiritual realm. So the conscious you is the one that must approach the presence. But of course, this also means that the presence must open itself to reintegrating the conscious you into itself. And in order for the presence to do this, the presence must integrate the lessons and observations made by the conscious you. So that is why the process is symbiotic, two-way process. And what you can do from the level of the I Am presence is to do what I have described here. Begin to contemplate. What can you teach your I Am presence? Has the I Am presence really seen what you see from here, from below? Have you seen what the presence sees from above? And can you integrate the two in your being from the vantage point of the conscious you? I know, because I can feel your minds, how your intellectual linear minds are trying to sort this out, but it's not an intellectual process. It's a process of shifting your consciousness. I'm not asking you to try and understand this intellectually, to label it, to categorize it. I'm giving you the teachings so you can begin to work on it intuitively and shift the way you view your I am presence. And begin to contemplate how you integrate with the presence. It is, we might say, if you look at the figure 8, a vertical figure 8, you can say the presence is the upper figure of the figure 8, your outer personality is the lower figure, and the conscious you is in the nexus. All I'm talking about here is the conscious you dissolving the subconscious selves that pull your attention into the lower figure so that you're more free to put your attention on the upper figure and extend the conscious you, like you have extended the conscious you into the lower figure of the figure 8. Now you are pulling it away from the lower figure and you are extending it into the upper figure, becoming much more conscious of the presence, what it is, the divine individuality that's anchored in the presence. But you understand that as long as you are unascended, it doesn't do you any good to say, yeah, here I am in the nexus, and now I'm looking up there on my own presence, and I'm seeking to conceptualize and understand my divine individuality. That's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to integrate so that you can express, you can become the open door and let your divine individuality be expressed through you. So that, pay attention now, it is not that you are looking up at your I am presence, seeing your divine individuality, and then letting it express through you. Nay, you integrate, you become the open door, and as your I am presence expresses itself through you, then you experience your divine individuality. You do not look at it from a distance as a concept in the mind. You experience it as it is being expressed. And that, of course, is another thing you can give to people. And that is also extremely valuable when you can give that to people. And this is the higher gift, the highest gift in your divine plan. Give of yourself.